Yes, you are now listening to the sound of Sports Reports as ordered. We got draft reaction. We got playoff reaction. We got a little bit of college basketball.
Yeah.
So that means that I got with me the one and only, the world famous, the world renowned, born in Texas, raised in VA, representing everything New Jerusalem. Let me stop the music for a second. The New York Jets have not won but 2 division titles since 1970. The New Jersey Knights won 1 title. So that means that since 1970, the Jets have 1 more division title than the New Jersey Knights of the World Football League, and they only played for 2 seasons.
They're such an oddly run organization.
They are. But he is Mr. Logical. Do us a favor. Fight, no feelings, just facts.
All facts, baby.
And I am your unorthodox statistician. Going left so much you thought I was southpaw, the same way that Raleigh Romero better this weekend. It is I, 25, live from the Alamo. Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things and grab you a liquid death while you're doing it. Holla. Let's get to it. So, Mr. Logical, you know, I've always sucked at saying goodbye. But you know what? Goodbye, Grizzlies and Heat. Nobody wants you here.
Yeah, those were easy ones to call.
Yeah, the first team in NBA history, the Heat, to lose back-to-back home playoff games by at least 30. And, of course, the one last night was by 55. So we've seen a 55 and a 50-point margin of victory in these playoffs so far, you know. So we're going to keep this short and sweet, you know. Like, we got Cavs Pacers now. You know, we'll get into predictions another day, but I'm just letting everybody know that I said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I'm picking the Pacers to win that series. But, Mr. Logical, with that being said, what do the Heat do from here? Nobody wants Tyler Hero.
You just play your young guys and see if you can find a diamond in the rough. The city in of itself, I think, is still going to be able to attract free agents just because it's Miami. And the lifestyle, the city life, the lifestyle, all the extracurricular stuff that attracts young men with money, as well as the basketball culture that attracts, you know, guys who really want to work hard at their craft. I think they have that going for them still. Right. It's just anyone looking at this series can see one team was outgunned severely. So they had the issue with Jimmy Butler one out of there, and that's fine. I think it's good to be able to restart when you have very competent people in the building, because we're going to talk about the NFL draft here shortly, and we're going to highlight where we think, you know, that might not be the case for some NFL franchises. But the fact that they are, like I said, they're a good team. They have good history, good recent history, great location. We could talk about the money, the no state tax in Florida, even though, like, you know, they pay tax other places they play. But the no state tax, I think they have a lot of room in their cap because they got rid of a lot of guys. They're not paying a lot of people a lot of money. So I don't think it's quite going to bottom out the way we've seen Orlando in the same state kind of just slowly start grinding back and be down for so many years. I think Miami is a developed young player away, or got to let just kind of go from 12 points to 19 points if he can.
Maybe like the other Nikola.
Just, I mean, try it out. Like, I mean,
you know, smart coach. Well, you know, over the next couple of years, this is legit that I'm about to say. So Bam Adebayo next year makes $37.1 million. The year after 51, the year after 55.1, and then the year after 59.2. You know, and then you still got Tyler Hero as well.
Yeah, he's going to get moved though.
You know,
because
and
you can't run both of those philosophies at the same time. We've seen it happen with other teams. We've seen it happen with Philly. It's like you can't pay a guy that much money and then still need to build around him, because if it doesn't work for 2 years, now you're looking at 80 million. Was that 90 million, 80 million?
so that 4
In
years that I
there over
just
the next
read
couple of
is
years.
over 202 million.
Yeah. So like right now they're in a rebuild, you know, whether they want to admit it or not. So paying Bam 37 and then 51, because it's going to take a couple years of rebuild. They're going to compete. They might go like 37 and 42 or 37 and 45, but they're going to compete. I don't think they're going to be down in the dumps, but you can't have a guy making $80 million, $90 million in the middle of a rebuild.
So should Memphis blow it up, stay as is, or just retool?
I think you got to move Ja just because he's the high commodity. I think if you can move him, if you can find a partner that's willing to, you know, give you something else, and maybe you build around, I want to say build around Desmond Bain, but Triple J is supposed to get this big check.
Well, I was thinking he was the one that you move.
You can't teach size. I think the size, you can make up for Ja's points just because he wasn't, the way he scored wasn't something like, it's not like it can't be replicated. You know, like you can get another guy in to get points probably more efficiently than Ja. And then he hurt himself trying to dunk over somebody again.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yo, just Euro step, get the 2 points, keep the momentum going. You're already a highlight reel. You can be a highlight reel in the open floor.
Right.
But get to the rim, get your layups in. But it's like he keeps doing things to his body. Like, yo, you are not 6'6", 226. You can't take this contact. So
I'm gonna
but
put
I think he's a sexy trade option.
I'm gonna put something on the screen, and I want you to tell me who I'm talking about.
Who needs a bench? I mean,
nothing?
one team out west, they pretty much gassed their team out. And
That's exactly who I'm talking about. That's exactly who I'm talking about. The whole second half, including a 40-year-old.
I mean, I kind of understand it.
I don't. Explain it to me, please.
You couldn't go down 3-1 not swinging. I mean, you because I don't know if the trade did it, but Dalton Connect, I honestly I don't even know why he puts on a jersey. ever since that trade went down.
In my notes, why isn't he playing?
So like that's one
I guess coaches just don't trust young players in the playoffs.
But that's the thing. Like I talk about this with my son all the time because he always says, like, he's like, I'm telling you, Dad, like, you know, this is how it's going to be. Like I'm like, yo, I think at a minimum, if you think a guy can't do multiple things on the field, Bill Belichick philosophy, don't tell me what he can't do, tell me what he can do. And just be like, Dalton, check it out. I'm going to give you 4 possessions in a row to get open and shoot threes. Everybody else be prepared to rebound.
Right.
Put them out there
and
with
it don't
Luka.
even necessarily have to mean that you're going to get the shot.
Just like, hey, I'm calling these are your plays. We're going to run these 2 plays, 4 to 6 possessions, up and down, up and down, up and up and down. Make sure you know where you're defensively supposed to be. Maybe you dumb it down for that series while he's out there. I know you can't do it the whole time, but you need these. You need to do this in February, March. So when April comes around, you don't have to play your starters for 40 minutes. The reason Boston can play the way they play, the reason Cleveland can play the way they play, hell, even Orlando right now, down 2-3-1, Paolo's on the bench getting a breather. Let these guys gain confidence. Yo, they're in the NBA. It's 400 of these slots on Earth. He has one of them.
Well, that's
put him on the floor.
Well, that's the thing. So LeBron is 40. Luka, Nico's big thing was about Luka's conditioning or whatever, which I guess that's kind of out the window because he survived. But as you look at this, I figure, hypothetically, let's say you want to get Dorian Finney-Smith in the game. Sit LeBron down for 3 minutes. LeBron comes back in, take Luka out for 2-3 minutes. Like, you don't have to take them out for 8 minutes at a time, but just a breather here and there.
2:30 left in the first. Take a look, like whatever under 3 minutes, whenever the first whistle under 3 minutes is, pull LeBron out. Or hell, play Luka and LeBron together for the first 6 minutes. Take Luka out from the 6-minute mark down to 3. First dead ball under 3, put Luka back in, take LeBron to the bench. Dorian Finney-Smith is out there already. He's gelled with Luka. Now you got him. Like, I know hindsight's 2020, but at some point you can't, as a coach or an organization, go into the playoffs making the same mistakes that cost Tibbs. It's cost Houston. It's cost a lot of teams not having a bench. It's cost Denver when they New York with Carmelo and the Knicks not having a bench. It cost Phoenix all season long. Last year and this year, not having a backup point guard. It cost Memphis not having Tyus Jones. Just like, you need these players. Everybody isn't 31, 6, and 6. Some guys are going to get you hustle points, 8 points, 6 rebounds, 2 or 3 assists, and maybe they get the other team's best player to get an offensive foul.
Yeah.
But, like, sometimes you just got to go with that. Like, Joseph just had Porzingis in the paint. Now, if you're a coach thinking like, oh, my God, I got to get him off the floor because they got this 7-footer. No, let him play basketball.
Yeah, so, in that game, the Lakers shot 25 free throws. LeBron, 18. Luka, 7.
That means nobody else was aggressive. No one else has any confidence. I'm upset with myself that I picked them because I watched them game one. I realized, like, these guys don't have any confidence. I was talking about that. I was watching the game with Rachel. I was like, these guys don't have any confidence. And that was part of my –
But why is that?
Group. Because they didn't – when you watch situations like Rui would get a rebound, and if he's on, he'll put the 3 back up. But I watch these guys get these possessions, collect the ball, and just immediately look for 77 or 23.
I was going to say, I think Luka is just lulling everybody to sleep. And it doesn't help because you remember back in the day, the Heat Dallas series, and people were talking about LeBron in the fourth quarter. In this series, Luka's 5 for 17 in the fourth quarter. So maybe that's the conditioning that Nico was talking about. But I got to apologize real quick because Julius Randle has been bringing it this series. You know what I mean? So I have declared that
there's nobody. I think really there's nobody on the floor that can. I mean, LeBron can try to guard him, but like LeBron can't put
not for 40. Yeah, not for 40.
Can't put that much time in it because he has to. He's the catalyst.
Well, I'm gonna declare right now, if Minnesota holds on and wins this series, I won't criticize Julius Randle for a year. Saying until next playoffs comes around, I won't criticize Julius Randle. The other thing with that is obviously a lot of people are going to focus on the last couple seconds of the game where the ball went out of bounds on Ant. They went back and reviewed it, and they ended up calling the foul on LeBron. And we were kind of talking about this backstage a little bit.
Yeah.
So it has been a rule. They've been doing this for about a year now. But this is where I think there's a fine line. Because you and Residente were, speaking out like, this is stupid. I agree with you. It actually is stupid. Yeah. But the other part of me says, do we want to get it right? Because if the Lakers come down there, score a basket, and we know that LeBron fouled somebody and got away with it, we're going to talk about that too.
That's the thing. In that, I know the rule book says that the hand and wrist are part of the ball if you're still holding on to the ball. So he had the ball in his hand, and he went across, at this point, his right wrist. But in slow motion, LeBron's arm and hand also touched above the wrist. So it's like, oh, now it's a foul. My gripe with it is that if you call out of bounds, that should be the only
You just
thing
got
you
to stick with
review.
it.
You got it. You the only thing you can review is like we called the ball out on Minnesota. They want to review. You can't be like, oh, I want you to review and look for a foul. Because think about this. NFL, if they're reviewing if the guy caught the ball or not, and he comes down, the ball moves, they be like incomplete pass, but upon further review, there was an incidental face mask, 15-yard penalty, first down. Like people will lose their mind. That's what happened here.
And that's where I agree with you. You know what I mean? But at the same time, like I said, I feel that just the society that we live in right now, you know what I mean? It's just one of those things. No matter how it would have played out, it would have been complained about. You know, like if they were just trying to get it right, you know, people would have said, you're slowing down the game and you're adding on to this.
When Ant Edwards was two hands shoving LeBron at a half court, that's not defense. Those are fouls.
Those are fouls.
Those are clear fouls.
And that's the problem.
He's shoving the face of the league at half court in the middle of a high pressure intensity game and no fouls called. But a defensive act where he's doing a Euro and slipping and the ball gets knocked out. It's like you review who it went out on, and that's it. You can't use super slow motion replay to make it up. I wouldn't have liked it either direction. Same thing with the Luka call. Luka got tripped. You didn't call the foul, so he traveled.
It's got to be one of the others.
You got to call one of them because, like, he traveled. Yeah, he dribbled the ball, bounced a couple of times, but he slid.
And I think that's the bigger
and then
problem.
Called the timeout. So if I'm Minnesota, it's like, yo, he traveled.
What you didn't call a foul.
You didn't call a foul. He traveled.
Right.
So then the Lakers review it. Like hypothetically, they call that travel. Lakers like, we want to review, and they see the foul. People will be up in arms, like, oh, you can't do that. But apparently you can. You can't have that kind of rule in place that allows for a subjective situation to be abused. Same thing with the Detroit game.
Yeah.
If you think it looks like a foul, you call it. You review it and say it's not.
Yeah, don't come back
game
with
over.
A 2-minute report because
before
they didn't even foul anything. That was right after the game. Like it was like 5 minutes later.
They weren't even out of the showers yet. It was still dudes probably still in the locker room taking tape off. And it was like, yeah, we missed that. Who cares? We could be done in 2 days.
I don't like the 2-minute report in the first place. I wish they just do away with the 2-minute report because
it does zero accountability.
You're not going to call them back out and say, play this 5 seconds again.
You're not going to suspend the crew because these are the best crews that scored, this throughout the entire season. These are the best available crews. You're not going to bring in, a pinch hitter off the bench to be a crew. Because you made a line in the sense that these are the best crews. I mean, I get it. Calls are calls, and they happen all the time.
Right. 100%. You know what I mean? And, and that's the problem, though, is that in the spirit of getting it right, we're just doing too much. And, like last night with the whole I'll get into that in a minute. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
So, do you know what team this could be?
Milwaukee.
No, this is the Orlando Magic that we're watching right now. They've been going toe-to-toe with Boston because Franz and Paolo are just that good at times. And to some degree, they remind me a little bit of Jalen and Jason before they figured it out. Jalen Suggs, he's injured right now, but he's that Marcus Smart defensive type guard, isn't the best shooter, can hit timely shots. So I was thinking about this, and if Orlando had Anthony Simons and Quentin Grimes, I think they could do a little bit more because then you take the ball.
You're really pumping this Orlando free agency GM move. It's like you trying to make that move east to Orlando?
Well, no, I'm just saying, I'm going to Orlando in a few weeks, but no, I'm just saying, it's just one of those things. Like, I like when I see teams that they're just missing something. You know what I mean? Like they're just missing, like Cleveland, right? At one point, they were missing a Donovan Mitchell. Like at some point, there's just teams that you can identify. Like the Pistons have a good team right now with vets mixed in with their young core that we talked about a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But when I look at a team like, say, Memphis, we were just talking about them. They got Ja Morant. I was about to say Ja Rule. They got Jared Jackson. They got T-Rex. You know what I mean? But they probably need one more shooter, like another 3-and-D guy that can stretch the floor consistently. And I think that they would be, I thought about it, Resident. Say I almost moved to Atlanta, man. That's where my sister at, but I think Orlando is, well, they're not even 2 shooters away. I'll just say they're a front office away. How about that?
The whole
that'll probably be easier. So here's this one. Are you ready now? You ready? Who's this team? Milwaukee. Because allegedly Nico called Milwaukee and said, I want Giannis. I'll give you Luka. Milwaukee said no. And now Giannis is probably walking out the door anyway.
As you sent me a clip that had Carlos Boozer talking about he should team up with Luka in LA. I despise those conversations. I think they're always forced. It's always just fantasy 2K basketball ideas. It's like, cut it out. More likely, you had a lot of New York conversations earlier this year. We're talking about either Brooklyn or New York. I think more likely Brooklyn. I was thinking like, no, you can't go to Brooklyn because I thought Milwaukee was going to be able to figure it out. But it felt like the conversation we've had before where teams have some success and then they chip away. They undervalue chemistry. They undervalue the glue guys, and they underestimate how many you need. Because sometimes, like if Boston right now, Boston has Pritchard, Hauser, Cornette, Horford. Those 4 guys probably can't go in the front office and demand a lot of money. But if they ask for a little bit more than you want to give them, look at it and say, if I don't give Pritchard hypothetically his $15 million, and I'm gonna replace it with KCP and got to give him 11, and I don't know if he can give me what Pritchard can give me. I'm better off just giving Pritchard what he asked for,
speaking
and not have to roll somebody else in. And I think that's what Milwaukee did. I think Milwaukee spent a lot of time like, you weren't gonna get the same impact with Dame Lillard as you did with Drew Holiday, but you didn't address what Drew gave you in the moves with Dame. Like you can still make the trade for Dame, but maybe one of your G League guys can be your defensive guy.
How about Andre Jackson, who I've been screaming for the last season and a half now, just rotting on the bench. But since you brought up KCP, let me say this real quick. In this series against Boston, now this is a 2-time NBA champion, by the way. He's their 6th leading scorer in this series. You know how many points he averaged in Mr. Logical?
3.5.
4.3 points on 24% from the field and 25 from 3.
And he's top
all the way out of here. All the way out of here. But back to Milwaukee. Giannis, right? Tonight. Like I gotta look at it again because I can't even believe it myself. But Giannis tonight, 30, 20, and 13. And they lost a 7-point lead with 38 seconds left. Dame Lillard get well, toward the Achilles, probably came back sooner, or you could even argue maybe he shouldn't even have came back this season. But, that's just the kind of guy that he is. Weber State in the house, but
Ogden in the building.
So as far as Milwaukee goes, how about this one? So you got Brook Lopez, right? The all-time leading scorer in Nets history. You got Kyle Kuzma, NBA champion. In this series coming into tonight combined, they were averaging 12 points, 4 rebounds, and assists together. Not both of them averaging that. Both of their stats put together equals that.
Yeah, they were not playing well. They weren't playing well. I think, like I said, I'll applaud you for your prediction. I think they just couldn't understand and couldn't match up with what the Pacers were doing on flight. I just think they just figure like this is different than the Pacers that we've seen before. The Pacers got a nice little run going. And I think that, and you haven't beaten Cleveland, we'll talk about all those previews later. I think the matchup was just a problem. I know Halliburton would have a big night and then an average night, but they would still win. I just think just like just the cohesiveness of it.
Well, see, and it's crazy
Milwaukee's
because
been
you
piecing
were talking
together.
about
They're piecing together coaches and players and trades. It's like I think they did too much after the 2021 championship. You gotta just spend just give that guy the extra few million that he wants because ultimately that's they make it six wins, six or
and they might
seven
as well have
wins.
just kept Middleton for this year. You know what I mean? They sent them over to Washington with their first round pick from this year, AJ Johnson, who we were talking about. He averages 2.5 points in Australia, and then he went over to the Wizards and averaged 9 points. And people are like, hey, this guy could be the future. So, so just within their moves within itself, Milwaukee has shown that they're not a good organization. Like, remember last year, they let Giannis pick the coach, basically. They brought in Adrian Griffin, went 30-13, fired him, and we were waiting for something to come out, right?
I never heard a
it never
report or
came out.
anything. Like,
Yeah, and then
I thought something egregious. I thought it was like a series of text messages, something like an Ime Udoka kind of situation
and then Glenn Rivers agreed with me because I said, don't give Glenn that job. And Glenn said, nah, I don't want this job. I'm probably not the right person for this job. So what does the Milwaukee do? They say, hey, you know what, Glenn? Your office is right there. And they put him in here, and here we are, losing another first round playoff series. It's just awful. But and then finally, oh my goodness. Well, actually, not finally. We got 2 more to go. But must see NBA TV. Why they do that to the Clippers and the Nuggets? Put them on NBA TV. And that ending the other day was one of the greatest playoff endings in history, as close as you can get.
Yeah, it was controversial. Cause man, like I think it looked like this. They figured the Clippers are an LA team. They're gonna get a certain number. Jokic is a foreign star. They're gonna get a certain number of viewers. But the personality just they're not there. Like the basketball is there.
Right.
Jokic, the way Jokic plays basketball is legit. I think his dry personality is kind of cool. I think Kawhi's kind of starting to speak up a little bit more, but it's still kind of like, all right, you're not box office television. You're gonna play good, sound basketball, which is fine. Tyronn Lue, coach team, Jokic like pretty much to Mr. Fundamentals, and that's where you go. You go to NBA TV when like that's what you're giving the audience. If it was a series between San Antonio and Dallas, that would have been on NBA TV. Just some fundamental games, not the old school.
Right.
I'm talking about like this recent wave. Maybe a little bit of Wemby, but I mean Wemby doesn't really get involved. Like the game doesn't go through Wemby. He makes his impact, but it doesn't go through him the way like goes to Jokic. So I think you put the team with the least lot of star power on NBA TV.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon tried to kill James Harden too. But as I was looking at it though, the Clippers were down 22. And it's always fascinating, the game within the game or the psychology and philosophy. So, they came back from 22, lost on that heartbreaker that if it didn't happen, the game was going to go to overtime. And it's like, how do you bounce back from that? Like, are you like, hey, we were right there. We just got to clean up a few things. Or are you heartbroken? And I know that they're vets, but when you go back to game 1, they should have won that game, but Russell Westbrook came through with the late game heroics. So realistically, the Clippers got to feel like we should have swept this team.
Yeah, but the Clippers fortunately have a coach that was the head coach of a team that came back from 3-1. So if anything, keeping a team level-headed and grounded and focus on the next day, I think he can do that. I know I picked the Nuggets in 6. It's if the Nuggets players on the court can keep it to where the coach doesn't need to make the decision. Because I think in a coaching matchup, Tyronn Lue's going to make the better decision, and Denver's going to lose it. So Jokic is going to have one of those games. Michael Porter Jr. is going to have one of those games where he knocks down 4 of 8 threes, gets to the free throw line. Like, these guys are going to have to make the plays to kind of protect. And Boston with
Boston's up by 21 now.
You'll see in a second.
Which is why I turned it. I'm watching the Nuggets now, which is crazy because Boston didn't even hit a 3 in the first quarter in this game. So, that's just nuts. And now they've blown it out. But yeah, Denver is just so odd because, Jokic is obviously who he is. We've seen him looking like he's the head coach at times and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So if the Nuggets win this series, and not even because it's the Clippers, because, the Clippers, for all intents and purposes, are mostly a joke. But if they win this series, the way that the Clippers have controlled this series for the most part, like, you just got to take your hat off to Jokic and say, yo, you're really him. But, last night, we got the Warriors and the Rockets. The Warriors take the 3-1 lead. I made the comment, Steph Curry has to watch Luka Doncic play basketball and just be furious with the way he gets held, beat up, grabbed by the Rockets, and he doesn't get any calls. And all Luka has to do is be clumsy, and he's shooting free throws. So last night was the game of all games. I sent you the one video with Draymond and Tari Eason where Draymond should have been ejected.
He should have been ejected.
I'm not going to hang on to that because I know how this works. Superstar calls, treatment, all that stuff like that. He had already had a tech from beefing with Brooks a few minutes earlier. But my favorite part of the game was Jimmy Butler telling Dylan Brooks that he's a bitch. And the ref's like,
huh? You talking to me?
What did you say? And he's like, oh, no, I'm talking to him.
That made it even worse because it's like, I'm not even looking at you. I'm disrespecting you. And then I'm telling somebody else, I'm disrespecting him.
Yeah, I'm clarifying. He's the bitch. You know what I mean? And in this series, in that Knicks series that Detroit won tonight, by the way, so 3-2, Detroit's still alive. And Detroit's got to feel sick, too, because game 1, they had the big lead in the fourth quarter, gave up a 21-0 run or whatever it was.
Run.
Yeah, then game 2, they were up, gave up a 12-point lead with about 6 minutes left. But it's 3-2 now, headed back to Motor City. But yes, this Warriors-Rockets series, I wish it was going 7. It's been everything that I thought it was going to be. I think we both picked the Rockets, but it doesn't look so well right now. The Rockets have been kind of going through the same thing that the Pistons have been going through. They've been right there at the end, but the guy that they rely on, Jalen Green, had a 38-point game to try to catch up with his girlfriend's age. And then outside of that, he's been in single digits for the most part doing his Draymond impersonation.
Yeah, because they run the same action. The game that they lost, I believe it was game 3. They were running like this same. When I text the group saying like they need to work on their offense, Sheduer was getting the ball at the free throw line, like off this pick and roll, and Draymond was sagging off of him. And every time he felt unsure, I'm like, you're open every time they do that. Just shoot it. Like he would do this, and then he would shot put it. He did it probably 6 times. And he knocked down a couple.
A bonus.
Like it was like it rattled around and go in. So I think he hit like 2 or 3. And then he ended up missing like 3 or 4 in a row after that. But like he was getting to that spot. But I was like, they keep running that same action. There was multiple possessions where it was like even the announcers were like, Houston's getting into their action with 8 seconds left on the shot clock. Like they dribbled it for like 16, 17 seconds. One person.
The Warriors, won the game last night with their hack-a-shack strategy. So Ime had to take Steven Adams off the court the last 3 minutes of the game or so when Houston was controlling the boards, controlling the tempo, but he had to react to that because Steven Adams is only a 46% free throw shooter.
But leave him out there.
But then my problem is, and I said this in game 1, you probably remember, why is Jabari Smith not playing more? He's only playing 24 minutes a game. He has some of the best games of his career against the Warriors. He's shooting
Can't guard Steph on the switch.
He's shooting
Steph calls him
58%
out.
from the floor.
Yeah,
And
Steph
he's
calls him out
55 from 3. Put him on the floor. Nobody can guard Steph, but I'm in.
But they put him in that pick and roll action, and he's in no man's land. And Steph knows it.
Get your 6'10" arm in the way. That's all you got to do.
That's the thing. He's nowhere near. He was nowhere near him. Steph hit him with like a mean step back, behind the back dribble. Yeah,
I wish the Rockets had Cam Whitmore for this series. I think it might be a little bit different. But Dillon Brooks, right? Poking bears again. Every time he pokes bear, his team gets bit.
Yeah, yeah. I know it's this thing going around 100 men versus one gorilla.
Oh my God.
There's a lot of people who think they can be a grizzly bear too. Hold up your laptops. That's about the size of a grizzly bear paw. So if you think poking bears is a good idea, I think you should. It's sometimes, man, it's like I get that persona is why we remember and love Rodman, why we love Mike Tyson, why we love Jack Nicholson, why we love Snoop Dogg, why people love Madonna for so many, like this persona, like this bigger than what you are famous for.
Madonna because she a freak.
But that was bigger than her music persona. And I get that celebrities now are coming out of sports arenas and you're starting to be, but if you have it, you have it. Dillon Brooks, you don't have it. You're never gonna get it. Like, people aren't going to look at you like, yo, this dude is so interesting because of the way he plays on the court. Draymond gets a pass because he has 4 championships. And when he talks basketball and he talks to the media, he sounds like someone in the media. He sounds like he's media trained. Dillon Brooks, the last soundbite we have from you is I poke bears. And then you're off that team. So it's like that attitude you have is only adversely affecting you.
Fair, that team hasn't been the same since he left.
True indeed. But that doesn't make his personality dope.
Yeah. And then last name, Mr. Logical, before we move on. Doug Christie, new head coach of the Sacramento Kings.
I like it. The problem is they'll still fire him in the middle of next year and pay out the rest of his salary. Like,
they got decisions to make, man. Like, it's time for DeRozan to go.
A lot of times, man, like signing that interim coach. Maybe you put him through an interview process. Maybe put some pressure on. Maybe you might find somebody else that you really rock with. But hopefully it works out, because what's going to happen is there's going to be an Antonio Pierce effect, where it's like, we thought this was a good idea, but here we are again, sitting at 36 and 46 in the West.
Yeah.
In 10th place.
They got decisions to make. They drafted my guy, Devin Carter. He was one of my steals of the draft last year. DeRozan's got to go. Sabonis has got to go. Levine has got to go. It's just time for reclamation at this point. You know what I mean?
And you should have just got a new coach, because now you got that coach, and then you're going to bear his cupboard out and expect him to be successful.
And the crazy thing about it is that they gave up Halliburton to keep De'Aaron Fox, and now they have neither.
Yeah.
Woo! Anyway,
so Christie knows he's about to get a nice residual check when they fire him by the All-Star break next year.
Are you ready?
So here.
Who am I talking about?
Loonies. I got
the one and only Sheduer Sanders. The one and only Sheduer Sanders goes in the 5th round of the draft. So look, before we even get started on this topic, I'm gonna throw a couple of words away. I'm throwing the word collusion away.
Dion. Yeah.
I'm throwing the word collusion away. I'm throwing the word racism away.
Okay.
I'm throwing the word humbling away.
You're adding to the list. We're having a conversation.
That's it. I'm getting rid of those words. You know what I mean? So Sheduer, right? So when I was looking at this, when I was playing around with the draft, And I brought this up to you a little while ago. I said that I don't know how good Sheduer is going to be. I think that he was probably an early second round pick. I think that because of necessity, because Derek Carr's situation popped up, it was like, okay, the Saints have to take him. Because even though I thought he was probably a second round pick, I thought he was the second best quarterback in this draft because this draft is awful at quarterback.
Okay, first of all, let's not say awful. These guys did play a lot of college football. They're talented guys.
I'm getting rid of black ball too, because if it was black ball, they wouldn't have drafted him.
The hype. I'm gonna say they aren't as hyped because I'll let you keep going up.
I don't think they're good. I don't think a lot of them are good. So Cam Ward, I believe, is an improviser that I need to see with constructs. You know what I mean? I need to see him with a system in place and see how he maneuvers throughout that system, because he's been able to just, I don't want to use the Patrick Mahomes thing because that's overdone, but he's basically the guy that turns shit into stew. And in the NFL, that's going to get your head knocked off. So I'm not so sold on him. I think he has talent, but I'm just not sold that he's this generational, oh my God, he's the consensus #1 draft pick. I don't believe that. Sheduer, I think, is talented. Holds on to the ball a little too long, but you can teach that away, hopefully. Waits for the big play, but so did Donovan McNabb, and he made a lot of big plays.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to give Sheduer, okay, let's see it. Kyle McCord, got nothing for you. Will Howard, he's big like Josh Allen. That's all I got. Quinn Ewers, we were just debating if you should take him over Carson Beck. And he went in the 7th round. Dylan Gabriel.
You might have been better off, like I said, taking one of these NIL deals.
Dylan Gabriel might not be
taller. Tennessee came open.
He might not be taller than Kyler Murray, and he definitely doesn't have Kyler Murray's frame. You know what I mean? So I'm not sold on most of these quarterbacks.
I think Cam Ward, because we haven't talked about him a lot, and people talk about it's a shame. And it's funny because people in the media are talking about it's a shame.
Why aren't we talking about Cam Ward? I don't know. You're the one with the microphone.
You guys run the show, run the show accordingly. I do like Cam Ward, and I think a couple of video clips. I know you can't make everything off of clips, but what I noticed off the clips that got posted with Sheduer and with other workouts, Cam Ward seems to be a player and a person and a man that holds people accountable on the spot. Mm-hmm. Why y'all drinking water? You drink water before you come out here, be ready to go. We don't need to take water breaks. Granted, that sounds dangerous, but I understand the sentiment. It's like,
well, that's not what I don't know. He said we barely got done with the first drill. Why you getting water?
That's what he said to Sheduer. Another workout with some wide receivers. He's like, y'all need to drink water before you get out here. He's like, I ain't drinking no water yet. So he's really on that. That's really one of his things. Is like, are you pushing yourself to the limits, or are you preparing yourself to push yourself to the limits?
Uh-huh.
So I think that's something. It might be hard for a rookie.
I like that. Yeah.
Like I said, I like it, and I liked how he talked to Sheduer. He was like, I'm a football player. I want to be known as a football player. I like that kind of conversation. So if I'm a GM, excuse me, I'd understand that. Excuse me.
So do you think that hurt Sheduer too? Like that was a potential of part of the story that hurt him?
I think that hurt Sheduer because I believe all these things, because I think his dad is very brash. I think he has absorbed that organically. I think he has shown that. And then there's a lot more clips of him in these confrontational moments. The confrontation with the Colorado State quarterback talking about, don't come shake my hand now. You're talking that shit on Instagram. I like to keep that same energy, but when you win, I think it's better to just be like, whatever.
He didn't say nothing different. He said nothing different than what Dan Lanning said. They're playing for clicks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's like,
I bet he shook Oregon's hands.
I'm cool with it either way. So it's like when he kept falling, and then Tyler Shook went the second. It was like, okay, there's teams that flat out said they're not going to draft him.
Mm-hmm.
Like
and there's
it
nothing
wasn't
wrong with that.
It wasn't a talent thing. It's just like we don't want him in the building. And people like lend it to the Colin
That's a good
Kaepernick
one.
or
Mm-hmm.
Tebow.
Yeah.
Well, I think because you don't want your backup. Like I said, the reason I didn't think he was going to go to New York is because, or any team that wasn't prepared to start him and wasn't prepared to like be successful to whatever media standard they're going to create once he gets named the starter. You don't want to have to answer every week. Yesterday, we interviewed Dion after the Colorado game, and he was asking about Sheduer. We asked him about Sheduer's playing time, and Dion said he doesn't know, a good organization would know when to start a good quarterback. Do you have any thoughts on that? That would have been the question, guys. Any GM, any coach would have been answering, any offensive coordinator, any player on the team would have been answering every week. Sheduer would have had the microphone in his face, and he would have to say, listen, maybe he said the right thing, like, hey, I'm just listening to the coach. And I think that was part of it. And once they realized, you know what? I don't think we're going to miss anything by not getting him, because we talked about how many teams didn't need a quarterback. Realistically, the number was only 3.
It was only like 3.
It was only 3 teams that needed a quarterback. And then
maybe
1.
4 if you count the Raiders.
But as far as a need, they signed their guy to a 2-year deal.
Right.
I'm looking at all the teams that have quarterbacks that they need to get answers for their performance
Pittsburgh's
this
waiting
year.
on a has-been. The Saints
Pittsburgh,
quarterback is hurt.
Saints quarterback's hurt. They have a guy in the building. I figured they would grab a guy, but I thought it'd be Sheduer. Arizona could have.
Well, see, this is my thing, though. But this was my problem because, as you know, obviously, me and you aren't new to this. We were watching football all our lives. You know what I mean? And I've seen people like Jameis Winston, who a lot of people thought was a rapist, go number 1. Cam Newton had his troubles, the stolen laptop and all that stuff. Went number 1. The last 2 NFL drafts, black quarterbacks have went 1 and 2. Like last year and the year before, 1 and 2 black quarterbacks. So when people were saying these things about Sheduer, I was like, okay, timeout. If you want to say Sheduer is a loudmouth and that played a part, okay. If you want to say people don't want to deal with Dion, okay. But don't tell me it's simply because they're trying to punish a black man or show a black man, teach him his lesson or something along those lines. No, I think that some teams thought that? Yes. Do I think all 32 did? Absolutely not.
I think that, and I posted
this Nico Harrison's in this world.
Real Sports 365. And I've even noticed this through youth sports, and you could probably test with that. Coaches don't talk the same way to players who have active fathers in their lives as they do when the father's not there. Because you talk slick to too many people's sons, you might have to deal with dad in front of the entire league very aggressively. So I think there is a dynamic. The NFL, I think the NFL didn't want I think teams didn't want Sheduer because they felt like he was going to just ride his celebrity, and that was going to be the spectacle. Right. It was going to be AB. It was going to be Tebow. It was going to be Johnny Manziel, and it wasn't going to be all about football. I fear that they thought they had more leverage than they did, and maybe they overplayed their hand. But when Cleveland took Gabriel in the third round picks are starters. So to take a guy that no one was going to take third, and then Tyler Shook, or however you say his name, he went second round in the Saints. It's
that was awful. That was awful.
That's
when Tyler Shook got drafted, that's when I said something's afoot.
And like I said, all the reports came out later that he's sandbagged some of the medias and so forth and so on. And I get it. If you don't want to deal with his attitude, that's fine. But you can't want to not get talent because of an attitude. When Cleveland, let's keep it a bean, you signed a dude to the first of the largest guaranteed contract in the history of your sport, who was coming off 29 massage parlor incidents that weren't fully resolved, to the point where you wrote into his contract he only got paid $1 million for the first year. So when he got suspended and they took his money, they only took one of the $230 million guaranteed. So you gave him a 4-year, $229 million guaranteed contract and a 1-year suspension deal for $1 million. So don't come at me with this level of integrity because you don't want to deal with his attitude.
That's also more reason for you to not want Sheduer if you think that there's issues there.
But
you've been burned already.
I don't want to say the fix is in, because I don't have anything to support that. But I do believe that it was intentional to deliberately pass up on him, just looking for any. Billy, you could have got any other defensive player in the third round that could have started for your team.
All right, so check.
I think the owner, because if you listen to Andrew Berry, the GM for the Browns, when he talked about Sheduer, the owner called and said, "Get Sheduer."
All right, check this out.
Because you don't draft two project quarterbacks in third and fifth round in the same draft when you have that many quarterbacks on the staff. Like that's not how you run a team.
This is one of my favorite games, you know, saying knowing 2-5, how you know 2-5. While this was going on, if you know 2-5 like you think you know 2-5, who was 2-5 the most maddest at?
Dion.
I was mad at Mike Tomlin.
Really?
Because I was sitting there like, you waiting on this has-been. You need a quarterback. You just went out and got DK Metcalf, paired him alongside your malcontent receiver that's already on your roster. You know, you lost Najee Harris. So now I'm looking at you like, who is going to be your starting quarterback when the season starts? Unless you just know under the table that Aaron Rodgers is coming.
Even if Aaron Rodgers is coming, if I had Aaron Rodgers starting ahead of Sheduer, and I'm Mike Tomlin, I'm at the podium, you know you're going to be good. You're going to be relevant. You're going to be, after 6 weeks, you're probably sitting at 4-2. No one's calling for Sheduer when you're sitting at 4-2. You paid TJ Watt his money. Your defense is still solid. You went out and got Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. That just for some reason seems to fit.
Caleb Johnson from Iowa at running back.
Just seems to fit Pittsburgh. So it's like your defense is going to be good. You're going to win games. Cleveland's going to be a dumpster fire. Cincinnati still hadn't gotten anything. So it's like, I think maybe they were thinking like, hey, maybe we can get him in the 5th because now we stockpile all this other talent. And Cleveland was like, just take Sheduer just so Pittsburgh doesn't get him, just in case he turns out to be good.
And
if he's no good, then if Cleveland cuts him, no one's going to want him.
Right.
But the last thing you want is Pittsburgh to get him. He turned out to be, have that Dak Prescott kind of rookie year where it's like relies on a running game, hits the tight end, 22, 23 touchdowns, 6 or 7 picks, and has a good season. Now you can build on that. You don't want Pittsburgh to get the opportunity.
And then last thing from me, so I was upset about that. You know what I mean? But taking a dude in the 5th round like Sheduer is just good business. You know what I mean? Like, why would I take you in the 2nd round if I know, or if I think, to a high level that nobody else is taking you?
At the end of the 2nd round,
when I saw Tyler Shuck, that told me everything I needed to know.
Yeah,
that you're going to be there.
When they traded up for Jackson Dart, and then Tyler Shuck went,
and then Jalen Milroe,
went, I was like, okay, Dylan Gabriel didn't need to get picked. I think Cleveland could have made any pick at that point, and I believe teams have been like, okay, because your 4th round skill position guys might be starters, but they're backups. Your 4th round quarterback, 5th round quarterback, 6th round quarterback, they're all you're drafting a backup there. So if he doesn't go, when it got to Cleveland, they could have taken, like, I think they could have taken anyone. I don't think anyone's going to take Sheduer, because I don't think anyone's going to take Dylan Gabriel unless they were going to try to draft a backup. I can see like maybe Arizona's doing something like that in the 56th round.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, it's just one of those things where I think it's just smart business. If I know no one's going to take you, I don't have to take you just because everybody else thinks I should.
Yeah, but at that point, and Joy Taylor, and this is the point Joy Taylor was like, listen, all these people who are evaluating quarterbacks and say they know what they're doing, they're getting it wrong. And I'm like, you know what? The history of it is a coin flip, because the toss-up was Peyton Manning or Ryan Leaf. It was like real conversation, like who was one, and it was 1 and 1A. Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels, that didn't really work out. I mean that's still trying to pan its way out.
Right.
Johnny Manziel, like Baker Mayfield went number 1 overall. It was like I was like, really? Baker Mayfield number 1 overall at Cleveland? Once again, Cleveland making these decisions. Then the Jets, they go get Zach Wilson a few years after they got Sam Darnold. It's not an exact science, so I think if Sheduer gets a shot, it'll be fine. Dylan, the problem with Dylan is that I think he has shortcomings. First of all, being left-handed does alter, like, sometimes some of the protections and everything else.
And not having a strong arm. We see
not
that
having a strong arm
already.
Undersized. I thought Miami probably would have taken a flyer on Dylan Gabriel, because it's like you can fit to our system because you're kind of, like you kind of relate more to our current quarterback. And that's what we talk. I talk about things with Lamar Jackson. It's like you can't have Drew Lock as your backup in Baltimore when Lamar is your starter. Like it's too dynamically different. You know what I mean? So it's right. But yeah. So like I said, the draft overall.
Yeah. I think Cleveland. Whose draft did you like, and whose draft did you not like?
I like the Giants draft. I'm not gonna lie.
I
like the Giants draft.
I don't want to admit it, but honestly, I did.
A couple of Giants fans I work with. T. Rob, nobody's a partner, participant in the show. Then one of the lacrosse ads, we're talking about it. I like what they did there. I didn't really understand Cleveland's philosophy. I did not like Atlanta's draft. I think they got a couple good players, but like I said, I don't like the way they treated the draft. They only drafted 5 players, and I get that all players don't make the team anyway. But it's like, how are you not more loaded out of 257 picks? Like, because I don't think they make the proper in-season management moves to acquire picks.
They gave up that first-round pick.
They gave up the first-round pick to get back in the first round. Like, you likely can, for the last few years, it's been
hold on. Time out real quick.
15.
Time out real quick. How did they? This is still about the first-round pick.
Yeah.
How did they make that trade to get back into the first round to get an edge rusher when the Giants, the pick prior,
gave up less and got a quarterback?
Like, who's making these decisions?
Because they're not. They don't. I don't think they manage the year and the offseason simultaneously. I think they look at the year. We need this for next year. And that's why so many free agents that Atlanta signs get 1-year deals, because there's no philosophy that they're building their players to. The Ravens, we're going to draft dynamic defensive players.
Hate them.
The Eagles, we're going to draft the best available SEC player that falls to us.
Like, you could
every year, and they do it every year. I think the Giants did a good job. Granted, Abdul Carter fell into their lap. I don't know why Cleveland traded out of 2, because if I'm looking at Cleveland, it's like you could have got Travis Hunter 2. Even though I wanted to get Abdul Carter, but you get Travis Hunter 2, and then you pair him back up with his college quarterback in round 2. You ignore all the outside. You were in the proverbial catbird seat. You could have made your draft your own. You could have really put the next few years. You could have I won't say kick the can down the road, but you could have extended your opportunity. Like I said with the Falcons don't make moves. For instance, Kyle Pitts was probably a good tradable piece, if not last season, the season before, that could have gotten you 2 second-round picks for the 2024 draft and the 2025 draft because it wasn't working out. When you had Desmond Ridder there and it wasn't working out, it's like, this isn't going to work. We're running the ball heavily anyway. Let's move Kyle and see if we can acquire some picks because this Ridder guy isn't it either. So we're either going in for a quarterback next year. I would like to have some ammo. We need to move up if we happen to win a couple extra games. So let me look at that right now. They don't. Grady Jarrett, another player. You could have looked at a couple of years ago. Like, you know what? I don't know how much more we're going to get out of Grady Jarrett, but I bet you Baltimore will slide us a 3rd or 4th round pick for him. Let's see what they got going. You know, because I'm telling you, I've watched so many players get drafted by the Falcons and not get second contracts because they don't build a team. They draft for 2025, 26. That's what they drafted for. This draft was for next season. It's not for 28.
Well, you know, like the Falcons are an unserious franchise, but the Ravens are a serious franchise because out of their 7 picks, I think 5 of them should have never been on the board by the time the Ravens got to them. You know, Malachi Starks in the first round should not have been there. You know, Mike Green, I know he's got the sexual assault allegations that he was never charged for, but that hurt him in this draft because he was a bona fide top 15 pick, you know, that the Ravens got at 59. The Ravens got him at 59. You know, you got LeJohntay Wester from Colorado. They got him in the 6th round. They got Robert Longerbeam from Rutgers. You know, shout out to Jersey. You know what I'm saying? They got him with pick 212. You know what I'm saying? And he had the most pass breakups in the Big Ten. So you know, like the Ravens and the Eagles just do this. As soon as the Eagles drafted Jihad Campbell at the end of the 1st round, I literally looked dead at my TV and said, what the fuck are y'all doing? Like, how would y'all let this team get him? And it's not even what he is today. It's what they're going to turn him into because Cincinnati tried to do the same thing with Shamar Stewart. You know what I'm saying? But I talked about him. I think he's the athletic freak. I just don't think he's what they're looking for, especially if they end up losing Hendrickson. But Mr. Logical, I'm going to give you 2 teams real quick that I just absolutely love their draft. One, the Tennessee Titans. I love the Tennessee Titans draft. They went and got one of the sleeper receivers that I was talking about, Alamanor from, I think that's how you say it, from Stanford. You know, of course, they got Cam Ward with the number 1 overall. They got Olawafemi Aladejo from UCLA. They got Kevin Winston from Penn State, who might be the 2nd or 3rd best safety in this draft. You know, they went and got Khalil Mullins at running back from Michigan, who took Donovan Edwards' job. And guess what? Donovan Edwards didn't even get drafted. And then to make matters even better to what you were talking about with Sheduer and Travis Hunter and their undrafted free agents, they went and got Xavier Restrepo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like, okay, another thing, Atlanta. You couldn't get Shiloh? You couldn't be like, you know what? Like, yo, let's go get Deion's son. He is our greatest player. His son plays safety. He plays DB. Like, let's go get him. See what we could do with him. It's like, nah, we're gonna let him go to Tampa. You know, it's just like just moves like that. Okay, and when they gave up their 2nd round pick, they go, the Rams go out and get a white tight end named Terrence Ferguson
from Oregon. Yep.
Come on, like, yo, like these players are sitting there for you, and you're not getting them. Like I said, you talked about Pittsburgh not getting a quarterback.
Well, they got Will Howard. They got
but like not getting one early, and I get it.
Let me.
It wasn't a lot of depth. It wasn't a lot of depth in the quarterback draft.
So I was mad about the Sheduer thing, but then I saw Mike Tomlin's interview with Rich Eisen on the NFL Network during the draft, and they asked him. They didn't ask about Sheduer, but they just asked him like, "Hey, you know, what was your draft philosophy? What were you guys trying to accomplish?" And Mike Tomlin always says the right thing. He said, we wanted to get back to Steeler football and big man presence. So when you think about that and you think about Ben Roethlisberger, it makes sense why they took Will Howard. I don't necessarily like Will Howard, but it makes sense. And
this Will was round 7.
I think he went 5th, maybe.
Let me see. I just want to get his physical stats because you're saying your boy Curtis
Rourke. He went in the 6th round.
6th round. All right. I just want to make sure I get the. Okay.
Yeah.
Will
so they
Howard.
got him at 6'4", 236.
Okay, that's.
Yeah, so that's what he said. He wants to get back to big man presence, and and just like Caleb Johnson, the running back that they got from Iowa that I liked a lot. He's Derrick Henry's size, but he runs more like Le'Veon Bell, like with that patient wait for the hole to open and then just bruise you through it. So I got what he was trying to say. I still think they should have got Sheduer, but after saying that, I did feel a little bit better about it. I like Seattle's draft. I'm not necessarily a fan of the Jalen Milroe pick. You know how I feel about that. But they got Eamon Warrior in the 2nd round, who shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, I don't mind the Jalen Milroe pick because you're just gonna install some gadget plays for him where he is like, your Chris Sleek to Tim Tebow kind of 1-2 punch, which is, like I said, I get it. You want to be dynamic. I just don't know if he can pass that well. 60% career completion percentage behind that Alabama offensive line is like, it's not a lot of pressure, not a lot of guys in your face. So we saw what Anthony Richardson did in Florida. Graham Hurts got drafted.
That's another guy that I thought about with Sheduer. Like if you have freakishly crazy talent, they'll pick you.
Yeah, unless you're in the HBCU, which once again, I think they went draftless again.
No, there was one that I could think of. The Ravens took an offensive lineman from Alabama A&M.
So, I mean, if you're looking at 5th round quarterback and you have Graham Mertz, Riley Leonard, you mean to tell me you couldn't take a flyer on one of the top HBCU quarterbacks?
You know who took Riley Leonard, right? You know who took who took him, right?
The Colts.
Why?
Because they're not a serious, we keep saying they're not a serious franchise. But once again, it's like, unless you plan on making him a different position, but you could probably do that with the HBCU quarterback.
Well, the Raiders, I was trying to figure out too, because they took Tommy Malo from Montana State that we talked about pre-draft. He was a quarterback, played some receiver. And then
but he's 5'11".
Yeah. And then
so he's going to play wide receiver.
And then they took Cam Miller from North Dakota State, who we remember from the Colorado game. And I was just like, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish.
It's a water pistol arm. It's just I think they meet guys and they get enamored with them, and then they just kind of pick them and get them in the building. But
you know who draft?
Yeah, I think a lot of these drafts, like I said, my argument will be this until I'm proven wrong.
You know who draft I might have liked
GMs just look at the championship rounds of the NFL and college football, and they just pick guys who they remember their names from that, or guys with Nigerian names because those are normally freakish athletes, and they draft them. That's it. That's literally it. Like, there's not a lot of California guys. Like, how did they got that many players from Michigan defense get drafted in the 1st round? And they won like 6 games.
Hey, they're just that good.
It's just because they watched the playoff rounds the last couple of years, and they just picked the teams who won national championships. Ohio State had a bunch of players get drafted.
You know whose draft I think I actually like the best of them all?
Chicago Bears.
The Washington. No, I'm just playing. The Carolina Panthers. So real quick before I even touch on Carolina, I'm not opposed to Washington's draft. Since you talked about your team. I'll just take a quick few seconds.
Yeah, my team is a laughing stock of the NFL a lot of times. So it's easy to have this conversation in April.
I don't mind our draft. I just think that we took too many projects. Like, I think that they have total upside that you want to see out of a draft pick. But I just outside of Amos at corner, which I love that pick, of course. and the offensive lineman that we got in the first round out of Oregon, I think that those 2 picks solidified, okay, we're moving forward still. The rest of the picks throughout the draft were, man, if that guy hits, like that's a diamond in the rough.
Mike,
Like,
I don't understand the draft strategies for most of these teams. And I know that there are, like, you have the draft experts that we see. Tommy Shays, your Jeremiah's, Rich Eisen does a lot of mock drafts. Colin Coward does a lot of mock drafts. Obviously, Mel Kiper Jr. And they put out their list. And the NFL Network puts out their list, best available players, and everyone has like these lists. And it's like, are you trying to outsmart people by, I won't say reaching, but like, we really love this guard out of North Dakota State, so we're gonna go get him before anybody else does? Or it's like,
nobody can you really get him?
Can you really just the safety from South Carolina sitting right there, 6'4", 230, runs a 4, like, you can't do anything with that. Like,
4.4, yeah.
You can. I'm not saying guards are a dime a dozen, but a lot of good ones are. You can pick those guys out. You can pick out, like, the 5th round guard is probably on par with the 3rd round guard. Depends on what line you get him in, or the tackle you get that maybe he stands up too high, and all right, move him inside the guard,
and you can teach that,
and you can teach that part. You can't really teach, hey, this guy runs and plays like Derwin James, like, because there's not a lot of them.
Right.
So when teams are drafting these guys, you can get, I don't want to say a dime a dozen because I think that's disparaging to like the hard work that they put in, but it's like, I can get a 5'11" like wide receiver. Like, why am I reaching to get this guy from Montana State that used to play quarterback just so I can say, look, I find this down in the rough? Like, no, I'm just gonna get this.
I can't wait to run these trick plays.
Yeah, it's like, and I think sometimes the conversation, like, Howie Roseman is putting on a clinic for the last
year after year. Yep.
5 years, we're saying, like maybe 6. Like, because I get a lot of like random podcasts, and I get one with some Philly fans, and they sent the clip. It was like, let's go over the first 4 rounds of the last 4 years. It was like they had like 16 or 17 players all contribute, either punt return, special teams, starters, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. Then you look the free agent moves. Jordan Mailata played rugby. Now he's a tackle that has a Super Bowl ring, and pretty sure he has maybe 1 or 2 holding calls on the year. But it's like, he's doing this with the same information all you have access to, and he's killing you every year. He was trying to trade up, and everyone was like, no, because like they think you're getting worked over. And the whole time, he was getting a guy none of you were looking at. You called it out multiple times. Like, I think you should go here. I think you should go here. That do be a good spot for him. And everyone was like, nah, I think Atlanta probably could have got him. Sitting right there at, like, not trading back in. They could have got him the 2nd round, but
yeah. It's just crazy. And but I was going to say, I like Carolina's draft probably the best out of everybody, especially considering where they are in the pecking order of things. They went out and got Tet early, and the good part is he's used to playing with little people as his quarterbacks. I don't think he's ever had a quarterback over 5'11" since high school. They went and got Nick Scorton in the 2nd round, who I thought was a 1st round potential. He was the guy that played next to Shamar Stewart. That is the seasoned, developed one of the two. Later on, I didn't necessarily like the Trevor Etienne pick, but I understand it. They went and got Lathan Ransom from Ohio State. They went and got Jimmy Horn from Colorado late. So, so like Carolina did a lot of things.
They got an edge from Mississippi.
The edge from Ole Miss. Yeah. But they just looked like, you know what? I believe, not me, but like, this is from Carolina's perspective, I believe in Bryce Young, but we should probably set him up for success too. You know what I mean? It was the theme of this draft. And
I think that's why a lot of people like New England's draft, because it's like I said, same thing in Carolina. It's like, we have a very obvious need that the world can see. We have a young quarterback, undersized. We have a young quarterback, inexperienced. How do we make the game easier? All right, let's get them protection. Let's get them a target. Now let's get them some people that could potentially cause turnovers. Get them a short field. That's it.
Yeah, and let's
Everything
get him
else
a home run
works
hitter at
off
running
of that.
back. Let's get our
Every,
version of Jahmyr Gibbs.
everything works off of that. What do we have? What do we need to do? Like people say, all three phases of the game. Yes, Atlanta, you don't have a bona fide. Your number 2 receiver last year is a slot guy that would kill in the slot if you went and got another outside guy. They don't. Yeah. So Carolina's like, cool. I got a small quarterback. I got a big wide receiver last year. I'm getting another big one this year. We got 6 games against our division. One team in New Orleans seems to be propping themselves up to draft the grandson of a guy we drafted 37,000 years ago. Tampa Bay seems to be doing pretty good, but those guys are getting older. They barely won a division last year, so maybe we got a couple. Atlanta didn't really make that many impact moves in the offseason. Their big impact move is trying to move Kirk Cousins. And so it's like there seems to be some level of discombobulation there because they want to move Kurt, but they don't have a backup, so they got to keep him. So they're so focused on that they didn't even address anything that Michael Penix needs because you still have a young quarterback here. You think you're just going to keep giving the ball to Bijan? Bijan didn't have a run over 20 yards last year because there's no force up the middle. So like Carolina's like, listen, we're just going to simply get players that are going to help our current young player right now. Our defense is young. My coach is in the second year. He seems to have the locker room under control. Let's give him what he asked for. And teams that like the Jets always do average in the offseason. The Bears always look really good in the offseason, but like, okay.
Hey, they got a Rutgers running back. Pound one guy.
But does Caleb Williams want to get rid of the ball? Does he want to get the ball to Colston Loveland that people feel like you've reached on?
It was weird too because they went and got the DJ Moore clone. I like the pick, Luther Burden. Just based off of value. You know what I mean? But we'll see. How that looks.
But check it out. Now you have teams that didn't really address the wide receiver room. Does DJ Moore get sent to a team like Pittsburgh? Because Pittsburgh's probably going to move Pickens for some picks, some capital. And then maybe Chicago gets themselves a 2nd and a 5th next year off that. Whatever GM they call. There's somebody
not Howie.
Not Howie.
Yeah.
Does Tennessee call and maybe they add DJ Moore to the fold?
I swear these teams, just like Jalen Royals, out of Utah State, not being biased, but out of Utah State, I was like, of course he would go to the Chiefs. But but I like the Chargers draft as well. So Denver real quick, I like their picks. I like RJ Harvey out of UCF at running back. I like the fact that they took Jade in the first round. I didn't expect that because they seemed pretty set at corner. But if you want to recreate that no-fly zone, you succeeded. Then you got the Chargers, right? I remember a lot of people were saying, why did they take Amarion Hampton? And it's because you just take talent when it's available. That's number one. Number two, they went out and got Trey Harris from Ole Miss to be that big body receiver that Quentin Johnson was supposed to be. He's not working out, so you got to do something better. They went and got a deep threat. I'm not a big fan of that receiver per se, but it's a deep threat. They went and got Kyle Kennard for who I don't know why he was available in the 4th round. And then, they went out and got R.J. Mickens, the son of Ray Mickens from Clemson, in the 7th round. So the Chargers had a lot of value here. So you know what I mean? So I'm excited for a lot of these teams, a lot of their drafts. And I've been stalking the undrafted free agents, like crazy, Shiloh to Tampa, along with Will Shepherd, you got Zy Alexander from LSU to Seattle. There's a lot of
Atlanta drafted safeties in back-to-back rounds.
Yeah. Ain't that crazy?
You don't have any pressure in the middle.
Yeah.
You have no pressure up front.
The Falcons did grab Nick Nash, out of the undrafted free agency pool. I like that. They did grab Kobe Bryant from Kansas. Me and Black Adam were waiting all draft for
How
his
many
name.
300-pound defensive tackles are on the Atlanta Falcons roster? Give me one defense. Give me how many defensive linemen weigh over 300 pounds? I'll pull it up.
Let me know.
Pull it up
no,
right now.
You let me know. It's your team.
I'd be flabbergasted if the number was 2.
They did take a defensive lineman in the undrafted, class. So let me see here. So let's see. Falcons. Let's check this out.
Sort by weight.
That's so hilarious. Like, I don't even know what you're trying to accomplish right now, but I'm here for it.
What I'm trying to accomplish is that.
All right. So defensive, you said?
Defensive line players over 300
All right,
pounds.
Defensive linemen. Okay, let's see. They have 0? Because all these are offensive tackles and guards. Let's see.
So
here we go. No, here we go. Defense. Here we go. So they got Laquelle London, who's 330. They got Taquan Graham.
How long? And they've been in the league how long?
He's been in the league for 2 years.
Nothing out of him.
They got Taquan Graham, who's
nothing
a DT.
Out of him.
He's at 307, 4 years in the league. They got Onyemata, who's 300 pounds, been in the league for 9 years, and then everybody else is under 300.
3 guys, 2 of which have done nothing, 1 of which was a free agent they signed last year. They let Grady Jarrett go. There's no push in the middle of the defensive line into the opposing offense's backfield. Every year, since the Super Bowl, that's been the case. And they haven't deliberately addressed it. They've passed on Jordan Davis. They passed on Jalen Carter. They passed on Dallas Turner. They have passed on probably the most dynamic they passed on Jamar Chase to take Kyle Pitts. So that's what I mean. That's what the 300-pounder part comes. It's like you need someone that can eat up blocks. You draft these safeties and linebackers, they're in no man's land if the quarterback is getting 3.5 to 4 seconds. Yes, the pass rushers should work on it a little bit better, and the edge guys should help. But if James Pierce and Jalen Walker are rushing up the field with that youth and athleticism, and the quarterback can step up into the pocket and help his tackles out, because now they got to come back down and try to get to him because there's no one at his feet, no one in his face. This safety is like, it's only so long these guys can cover. 4 seconds is an eternity in the middle of a football field that wide. No matter what coverage you're in, man-to-man zone, someone's going to get open. And it's like, if you have no push into the face of the quarterback, that's what's going to happen. It's the same thing in Cleveland. Cleveland, you don't have the luxury to have 5 quarterbacks on your roster. It shouldn't be 5 people are trying out for that job.
Right.
You should have stopped the application process at 3.
And how about the Houston Texans taking both the Iowa State wide receivers, and then
because they had so much production in Iowa State. Like, what are you doing?
And then Miami, with the 2 players of the draft that are just wild that they went where they did is Ollie Gordon and Quinn Ewers. So and that was what I was going to bring up with the Sheduer conversation. Saying like Quinn Ewers staved off Arch Manning and went in the 7th round. Saying, don't talk to me about Sheduer.
And Arch Manning's projected to go number 1. That's what.
Yeah.
Listen, I know Joy Taylor hasn't gotten a lot of clout recently. Through her.
She get clout every time I see her.
But that's what she's saying. It's like, so you got the guy. So Arch Manning couldn't beat out Quinn Ewers.
People get lost in that peanut butter, man.
But Arch Manning already is projected to go number 1 to the Saints next year. Granted, I know it's like complete,
right.
And everything else, but it's like
Well, I've seen some mock drafts that have Lenore Sellers in front of them. I saw one that had Drew Aller in front of them. So we'll see.
I think they're just throwing names against the wall, and hoping it
just
sticks.
To be different, just to be. Then if it happens, I got that.
They should start hyping up some small school quarterbacks that played quarterback 4 years, like Jackson Dart.
They need to holler.
John Gruden did not rock with Jackson Dart. When he said, "What's your snap count?" He said, "That's it."
No, they need Kevin Jennings from SMU. That's who they need to look at. You know what I'm saying? There's your sleeper. But Mr. Logical, real quick, we wanted to, talk about this. We saw something that stood out to us. So
interesting.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you see people get breast reductions. You know what I'm saying? You see the ACC and Big 12 deciding we just play too many conference games. And then from what I gathered from it, you were on board with it. I'm kind of indifferent, but I lean towards what's the point, but I'll let you have the floor.
When you sent me the article, I thought the opening, the headline, the opening paragraph was interesting enough, and I replied, we should talk about this in the show. So I went back and I read through it. The reason behind, and this is college basketball,
yes.
It's college basketball.
From 20 games down to 18.
And the reason I like that is because we talk about college basketball or college sports postseason team selection. And a lot of it becomes who's your best loss, which is ironic because it should be your best win, but
they don't be having them.
They don't have them. They have
North Carolina 1-11 in quad one and made the tournament somehow.
Yeah. So you figure you give an opportunity for Big 12. So you say a school like Texas to play. You know what? Maybe not Texas, but Colorado, for instance, their basketball program. Maybe we play a road game against LSU, or we go down to Auburn and we play that game. And maybe Auburn goes 29-4 in the season. We play them tough. That way, when we play our conference schedule, it's going to be like, hey, well, they did hold tough against Auburn. Auburn's one of the best teams in the country. And it gives you that a little bit more, like an extra bullet for your EPR. Something like that good solid bullet. You know what? That's a good bullet point. It's a good piece to land on. Because what we're finding out is that the tournaments are expanding. College football is probably going to be at 16 soon. It wouldn't surprise me if the NCAA figured out a way to up that number to 84.
Talking about 72 with the plan to end up at 96.
Yeah, so you want to do everything you do to get your opportunity to get in. And I like it because the idea is that they're going to schedule tougher non-conference, more marquee non-conference matchups. So if that's the case, I'm with it. But if they spend that time playing against Robert Morris and Wright State and, some of these other schools just to get another 2 tune-up games in,
that's what I think it's going to look like.
That's going to be the problem. But if you say, you know what, hey, UConn, meet me in Madison Square Garden, let's get our game on, I'm rocking with it. But if you're like, yo, hey, Indiana State, you guys have been kind of good for the last few years. Come on down and play us out here in, at Charlottesville. Yeah, I just hope that's not the case.
It's funny that you bring up UConn because my first thought when I saw this was the conference are just getting too big. You went out and got Stanford, Cal, SMU. You could cut them. You could cut Syracuse. You could cut Boston College. Bring in UConn and Memphis, and voila, your conference is better. And
your conference is tougher.
Yeah, because when you go back and look at it, right, this 20-game schedule for the ACC has only been in place since 2019. So we're talking 4 or 5 years here, 6 years. So my first thought when I read it was similar to when we talked about college football and how they react to, we need to take away the automatic buys and we need to do this. It's like a overreaction to a down year or something along those lines. Because, for example, the ACC this year went 2-14 against SEC teams in basketball, right? Okay, cool. But just 2 years ago, they had 3 teams make the Elite Eight. You know what I mean? 3 teams.
Well,
NC State, Clemson,
maybe
and
they
Duke.
want that every year. Maybe they
Ain't
did
getting it
some
every year.
research
That's just the nature of the
and
sport.
felt like, hey, the path for these other teams, these other conferences look like this. Or maybe they're trying to get ahead of it. Like, you know what? Let's see if we can get ahead of this and then beat out these other teams. Because
or just win your games. That's the problem. You just gotta
yeah,
win.
but that's part of it. But
that's all
you
of
gotta
it.
you gotta have a safety net when winning isn't, because sometimes just simply winning isn't always enough. We talked about, like I said, Indiana State and Drake. Those teams would they had a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
It's like
you
got to get him in a tournament just off of the nickname alone, on top of the fact that they played a conference championship. I think one school was 28-5, the other one was 29-4 when the game tipped off.
Yeah, then the media was all talking about him, so he had notoriety.
Yeah, notoriety. They just lost their tournament game. I'm like,
college football would have put him in.
Yeah, I would have rather. Like I said, I always say this. I'd rather have a 29-5 Big Sky team over a 19-16 Texas A&M. You know what I mean? Like, just give somebody else a real shot. If Texas A&M makes a run, is like, do you
Jamal
really?
Murray is going off. He is going off. Yeah, he's got 27.
He's always good for one.
Yeah, he's at 27 points with 8.5 left in the third quarter. In the first half, he was 8 for 10. You know, but no, I think
that Canadian goes off, man.
Well, it's everybody's just reacting. So, like, you know, we talked about the Crown for a little bit. You know, that tournament that they added this year after the Elite Eight, after that weekend, it lasts for that weekend between the Final Four, and you had these teams that were from the Fox conferences, so the Big East, the Big 12, you know, Mountain West, so on and so forth. And it was just like, okay, you're just playing basketball to play basketball because you need inventory and you think people will watch.
The money grab is I'm never gonna really rock with the money grab. It's like, all right, like, give it up. But to kind of position yourself, like, imagine like a cross country runner. It's like, you know what? I'm looking for the right path, and you're trying to figure out the best ways. Like, you don't have to go out there and start at a dead sprint. You got to, like, you manipulate how it goes and where you run with and who you pace yourself with. I think manicuring your season preseason makes sense, especially if you're going to actually have competitive games. Because we talk about with college football, I believe that LSU versus Oregon week 1 neutral site game, I don't know how often those are going to happen, considering that LSU now has Texas and Oklahoma in their conference.
I mean, they're opening their season. Well, they opened, what was it, 2 years ago? They opened with USC.
Yeah, it was USC, LSU last year.
Then,
yeah.
The 2 years before that, they did in Orlando and New Orleans with Florida State.
Yeah, but like I said, I think this transition, if they use it to get more competitive teams, is we're going to get our UConn versus Florida matchup, you know, in the beginning of the season. Whereas I think in college football, I believe with the SEC and the Big Ten trying to get these guaranteed spots of, 6 to 8 spots, and there's only 12. I'm looking like Oregon's gonna be like, yo, there's no incentive for us to play a tough Alabama game on the road, open up the year, because you guys are still gonna get the automatic bid, even if we beat Bama and Bama ends the season 9-3, but we have a couple of bad weeks and we end up 9-3. You're gonna give Bama the edge because they have already,
they got the brand name, they
got the brand name, and they've already legislated their automatic spots.
And remember, we were talking about that offline, where college football is now looking at, talking about, hey, TV ratings could affect whether you get into the playoffs or not.
But that's been the thing about it. They're just saying the quiet part out loud. We've already known that if it's between Boise State and Ohio State, if they were 4 and 5, they're like, okay, who can fill a stadium in New
Jerry
Orleans?
World.
Who can fill Jerry World?
Yeah.
Who can fill New Orleans? Jerry World maybe because it's center and you can get a lot of Idaho fans that can make that trek down within reason. But I know for a fact I'm a pack Miami Stadium with Ohio State versus Notre Dame fans. If that's a national championship in Miami, I know that's going to happen. So with college basketball, it's like you have so many opportunities. Playing 30 games to build a resume is a solid number. And if I can get 12 of these games to be part tune-up, part showcase, and then make my 18-game run through my conference, then I think that's a smart move. Once again,
and the
it's
Big
gonna
12,
I believe it's gonna be manipulated to where you're playing Mercer.
Well, the Big 12 took a different approach to it because they're doing the same thing where they're reducing their conference games, but theirs was more like the SEC football excuse of, man, we playing some grinding games, we need rest, and we can't like play at Kansas today and then play Baylor tomorrow or 3 days later. Like that's just something that other conferences aren't doing, even though the SEC was the best this year. So I think that they're just receiving the fallout of letting their conferences get too big. I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, but like I said, I like that it's being addressed instead of waiting for the committee to just, for lack of a better word, just have pity on the depth of your conference.
Right.
It's like, well, let's put it in place to where the committee can look at our strength of schedule or non-conference games or neutral site games, or I know like they play like elite, like the Maui Invitational, and then like a couple of like classics
they got
there
some
in New York
ones,
City, some different ones. Maybe teams start negotiating to get into those, whatever the parameters are, instead of saying no to that automatically. You know what? I think it's good to send North Carolina to this Maui Invitational and they play Arizona.
Well, I think with the ACC in particular, like the brands just aren't, like this year was probably Virginia's worst season since I was a kid. Syracuse, Jim Boeheim is gone, so they've kind of fallen off a cliff. Boston College was never really a big brand, but they were always a solid team, going back to like Jared Dudley and people like that. So I think that's more the issue. You did just have Cal lose Peja Stojakovic's son. I believe he went to NC State, if I remember correctly. So within conference, but that's the thing, is that these players that with the NIL, and we've been talking about the transfer portal, there's no reason that the ACC can't be better. You have brands, you have names, you have locations.
Your window is shorter. So I think manipulating, because it's going to be year by year, because the NCAA men's basketball has been pretty solid. I think all of the influx and basically the super conferences is kind of messing up the feng shui a bit. But getting out ahead of it by saying, you know what, let's make it known that we are trying to increase our schedule, increase the entertainment value, increase the competitive nature of our schools. We're doing this and these people aren't. So when tournament time comes, it's like, hey, you got 5 Big Ten schools. What about all of us? We played all those, like we had 6 of our teams play that Big Ten schedule, or whatever the case may be. Like, it just lends itself to this, like when they go in there, it's a feather in their cap. Once again, like you said, it's all about winning. You got to win the games. But when it boils down to, do you want, like I said, 19-13 Texas, or do you want 20-12 North Carolina that played 2 extra games, one in Miami, or one neutral site in the Miami at the Miami Arena, and they played another one in Madison Square Garden against like UMass or whatever. Like, whatever the case may be, like, does their 20 wins elevate you that much more over 19? when usually was like it's just one win.
Well, that's kind of the other problem that now that you bring that up, that wasn't something that I was thinking about before, but that's the other part of it, right? Is that it's not just playing these other teams, you know, because you don't know, generally speaking, you don't know year to year who's going to have a down year, who doesn't have a down year. This stuff is scheduled in advance. Like UMass hasn't been good since Marcus Camby. You know what I mean? But like depending on who you play, where you play them, that's when you get into your quad systems. So you might play a team with a name, but if it's a quad 3 versus a quad 1, it didn't really help you anyway. And especially if you lose it. And if you lose it, it's going to hurt you a hell of a lot more. Yeah. So that's why I think that it's sort of an overreaction. Like I'm indifferent to it. I don't really care either way. I just want Memphis and UConn to be where they're supposed to be. That's my big thing. Like, just get the right teams in your conference and cut the dead weight.
Yeah, but once again, you know, college football drives that these you know, these integral moves and things of that nature because you follow the money. But the tournament is the moneymaker. That's the great equalizer for college basketball because you got a shot. It's like when I was playing poker a lot. People are like, "Oh, you out of chips?" And I got a chip in a chair. That's all you need. I mean, if I got this chip, if I can, you know, there's 6 people at the table, and I got is this, and I win this hand, and all 6 of you now, now I got 6 chips. I'm pushing back in like I got a chance, and I think NCAA tournament you have a chance. Football, you pretty much don't, but you have to allow football to make the moves that they make because it's going to bring in the money. It's going to bring in the TV time. It's going to bring in the conversation. You're going to be able to now, I'm not sure what the recruiting rules are, but if you are a college basketball team, you have a good recruiting school, like say Rutgers has a good year next year. Now you can bring in basketball. You can bring in the football recruits, have them watch a basketball game because it's like, that energy spreads throughout the campus. So now the games are packed. You take them to a game. It's like, hey, we got a couple of recruits in the building, outside linebacker from this school, blah, 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 blah. Give them a warm Rutgers round of applause. And if it's a packed arena, that works. But if you're playing in front of 6,000 basketball fans and you're trying to recruit a kid to play football and it's like, it's not working, you can make that work. But I think you just kind of have to rely on football. But in the same sense, you have a little bit more wiggle room as far as your basketball schedule because you play so many games, and you can get on a run, and you can catch a team on an off night, and your best guy can go for 30, and you beat a top ranked Auburn, and now you're riding that wave for 3 or 4 weeks. That game happens in February. The selection committee pretty much ended that month, and you're locked in.
You just got to get it right, because I mean, even though they're not in the ACC, like schools like Georgetown, right? Like this year, they're projected to have a first round pick for the first time since Otto Porter, which was back in 2013. So, so like there's ways.
Yeah, you got to catch them when they're hot. Yeah.
Yeah, you just got to. Yeah, that's all it is. You know what I'm saying? But you can catch us on Friday. You know what I'm saying? We'll be back, more NBA playoffs going on. Clippers up in here getting the beats by Dre as we speak, but they were down 22 the other night, so don't cut it off yet. They got it down to 13 now. So he is the world famous, the world renowned, Mr. Logical, and all he ever asks of you is to not bring feelings to a fact fight.
Factually.
And then of course, I am 2'5". I believe in Joe Hendry. I don't know why the hell boxing can't get their shit together and, get these fights advertised.
Just send out a tweet.
Just send out a tweet.
Just send out a tweet. It'll catch. That's all you gotta do.
So like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. And don't forget your liquid death, people. Don't forget it. And last thing to not forget, that we love you. In a few days. Peace.